In the remote wilderness of Aroostook County, Maine, a 32-year-old environmental surveyor was about to unlock a secret her family had kept frozen for decades. What started as a 35-cent inheritance took a shocking turn when she discovered a man suspended in ice beneath the tower's foundation, alive. Aware and erased from history 23 years ago, Ivy Danner wasn't your typical surveyor. For 9 years, she had spent her life studying isolation and the patterns of disappearance in cold places, haunted by her younger brother, who vanished into a winter storm when she was 12. Known for her methodical approach to the unexplained, Ivy had built a career analyzing what others chose to forget. When she inherited a frozen stone tower from a great-aunt she'd never met, she had no idea she was walking into the center of Project Halcyon, a classified government program that preserved whistleblowers by burying them alive in cryogenic suspension. The breathing she heard through the ice, the warnings left on cassette tapes, and the man hunting her through a blizzard would force Ivy into an impossible choice: let the past stay frozen, or risk everything to bring the truth into the light. What began as a strange inheritance would become a desperate fight for survival. The government secrets buried beneath Maine's snow, and the 3 other names still waiting to be uncovered, would challenge everything Ivy thought she knew about her family's silence, and the true cost of keeping some truths frozen forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches, you make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The road disappeared under snow 2 miles back. Ivy Danner kept the rental truck in second gear, following tire ruts that might have been from last week or last season. The GPS had given up an hour ago. Just a blue dot spinning against gray. She'd paid 35 cents for the deed transfer. The paralegal had laughed when she handed Ivy the receipt. "Cheapest inheritance I've ever processed," the woman said. "Must be your lucky day." Ivy didn't feel lucky. She felt cold and confused, and like she'd driven across the country for a joke she didn't understand yet. The tower appeared through the trees like a fist of stone punching up through the white. 3 stories tall, maybe more. Granite walls banded with iron, the whole structure glazed in ice so thick it looked like the building had been dipped in glass. Window slits milked over, the door sealed shut under a frozen waterfall that had hardened mid-pour. She pulled the truck to a stop where the road ended. "Killed the engine." Silence pressed in immediately, broken only by the tick of cooling metal and the distant crack of branches giving up under snow weight. Sable lifted his head from the passenger seat, ears forward. The Malamute had been still for the last hour, watching the landscape change from highway to wilderness. Now his amber eyes tracked something Ivy couldn't see. "Yeah, I know," she said. "Looks like a prison, not a house." She'd inherited this from a great-aunt she'd never met, Elise Maren Danner. The name appeared on exactly 1 document in the inheritance packet, the deed itself, and nowhere else. Not in family photos, not in stories, not even in the genealogy records her mother had kept before the accident. Ivy's phone showed no signal, no bars. Just the time and a battery percentage that felt suddenly important to track. She unfolded the blueprint that had come rolled in a cardboard tube with the deed. 2 floors and a shallow cellar. Simple cylinder design. Utility access from the north. But standing here looking at the actual structure, something didn't match. The exterior height suggested 3 full floors. Maybe more if you counted whatever foundation might be buried under the drifts. Sable whined low in his throat. "I see it too," Ivy said. She pulled on her parka, checked her headlamp, and grabbed the emergency pack from behind the seat. Sable jumped down when she opened the door, landing in snow up to his chest. He pushed through it like he'd been born for this, shoulders working, breath steaming. The walk to the tower took 10 minutes. The drifts had crusted over, and Ivy's boots punched through with every 3rd step. Sweat gathered under her thermal layers, despite the cold. The temperature had to be below 0, maybe well below. Her exposed cheeks burned. Sable reached the tower first. He circled the base twice, nose down, then stopped at a point along the foundation wall. His front paw came up, scratched, deliberate, focused, the way he dug when he found that injured hiker in the Cascades last spring. Ivy knelt beside him. The ice here looked different, thinner maybe, or textured in a way that suggested something underneath. She pulled off her glove and ran her fingers over the surface. Cold bit deep into her skin. She found it by touch more than sight. A seam in the stone, almost invisible under the rime. She chipped at the ice with her knife handle. Slow work. Her breath fogged and refroze on her scarf. Zabel sat beside her, patient, watching. The seam widened. Not a crack, a keyway, recessed into the stone, hidden by ice and shadow, positioned so you'd never see it unless you were right here, kneeling in the snow, looking for something you had no reason to know existed. Ivy pulled the blueprint tube from her pack and shook it. Something rattled inside. She twisted the end cap off and a brass key fell into her palm. Heavy, old. The metal stamped with 3 letters. E.M.D. Elise Marin Dana. Well, Ivy said to the dog, at least someone knew we'd need this. The key fit the hidden lock. When she turned it, something deep in the wall mechanism clicked. The sound traveled through stone like bones settling, then nothing. She stood and tried the main door. The ice resisted, then cracked. The door itself groaned inward, hinges screaming against rust and cold. A breath of air slid out from the darkness beyond, warmer than it should be, warmer than the night. Sable's hackles rose. He didn't back away, but he didn't rush forward either. He held position, nose testing the air, body tight with tension. Ivy shone her headlamp through the opening. The beam caught on ice-slicked walls, a spiral staircase climbing into shadow, and something else. Meltwater, dripping steadily from somewhere above, pooling on the flagstone floor, running in thin channels toward a grate near the center of the room. It shouldn't be melting. Not in this cold. Not with the whole structure frozen solid from the outside. She stepped inside. Sable followed close enough that his shoulder brushed her leg. The door stayed open behind them. The wind pushed in, carrying snow that hissed across the floor. Ivy swept her light in a slow arc. Empty room. Iron stove in the corner, cold. A few pieces of furniture draped in canvas. The spiral stair wound upward, treads slick with moisture, and at the center of the floor, visible now that she was standing directly over it, a hatch. Heavy wood, bound with iron, sealed under ice as clear as window glass. According to the blueprint in her pack, this was the cellar access. A shallow storage space, maybe 8 feet deep, but she'd walked the perimeter outside. She'd seen the foundation depth. That hatch covered something deeper than 8 feet. Much deeper. Sable circled the hatch once, twice. His paw came up again, scratching at the ice. Then he sat, looked at Ivy, and waited. She pulled her sleeping bag from her pack and spread it near the stove. The tower held more ice than open air, but at least the wind couldn't reach them here. She'd camp tonight, figure out the rest in daylight. Through the open door, the rental truck sat distant and small, her last connection to the world outside. As she watched, fresh snow began to erase her footprints, filling them in like they'd never existed. Ivy woke to the sound of water, not dripping, running, a steady thread of it somewhere close, rhythmic as a pulse. Her headlamp had died during the night. She switched to her backup, and the beam caught movement. The ice covering the cellar hatch had thinned. Water ran in channels across its surface, carving patterns that looked almost deliberate. She checked her watch. 4:17 a.m. She'd been asleep maybe 3 hours. The temperature inside the tower had risen. Not warm, but no longer the killing cold from outside. She could see her breath, but it didn't crystallize immediately on her scarf. The walls sweated. Moisture beaded and dripped, accelerating with every minute. Sable stood at the hatch, staring down through the thinning ice. His tail stayed low. Every few seconds a growl built in his chest, then stopped. Build and stop. Build and stop. Ivy knelt beside him. Through the clearer ice, she could see the hatch's surface. Dark wood, iron bands, and something else. Carved into the wood, barely visible, a symbol. 3 triangles interlocked at their points, forming a shape that hurt to look at too long. She spread the blueprint on the floor, weighing the corners with her water bottle and knife. The tower's design was simple. Almost too simple. Ground floor, second floor, shallow cellar. But the wall thickness on the diagram didn't match what she'd measured last night when she ran her hand along the stone. The blueprint showed 18 inches. The actual walls were at least 3 feet thick. Space for something. Passages, maybe. Or insulation. Or something else the blueprint wasn't meant to show. She circled the room, testing the walls, looking for seams or panels. Nothing obvious. Just stone and ice and the steady drip of meltwater that shouldn't exist. Under the third stair tread, her boot caught on something. She knelt, pulled. The wood lifted, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside, a tin can rusted at the edges. A cassette tape inside, the label written in neat block letters, "For the one who opens the door." Beneath the tape, a Polaroid. The colors had faded, but the image was clear enough. A woman in a wool coat standing in front of this tower, younger, maybe 30 years old. Her hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. Ivy turned the photo over. Written on the back in the same neat hand, EMD, 1987 Elise. She searched the room until she found it. A hand crank recorder in a cabinet built into the wall, old military surplus by the look of it. She loaded the tape, wound the crank and pressed play. Static, then a voice. If you're hearing this, you've already made the first mistake. The voice was controlled, precise, a woman's voice, older than the face in the Polaroid, but carrying the same careful certainty. My name is Elise Marandana. If we're related, I'm sorry. If we're not, you should leave now while the ice still holds. A pause. Breathing. The tower sits on what the government called a preservation site. Project Halcyon. Discontinued, or so the paperwork claimed. But some projects don't end. They just get buried under better stories. Another pause. Longer. Do not force the lower hatch. The ice is doing a job. It's been doing that job for 23 years. If you break the seal before you understand what you're breaking, you won't leave this place. Neither will what's down there, the tape hissed. Then, if you must proceed, learn the pattern of the cold. North wall. Third stone from the base. The numbers are there if you know how to look. The recording ended. The take-up reel spun in silence. Ivy rewound and played it again. Listened for anything she'd missed, tone, emphasis, background sound. The second time through, she caught it. A rhythm under Elise's words. Not music. Something mechanical. A hum at the edge of hearing. Sable barked once, sharp, alert. Ivy killed the recorder and listened. The meltwater had stopped dripping. Not because it froze again. Because it had pooled. The channels now ran to the hatch, forming a perfect spiral around its perimeter. She grabbed her headlamp and moved to the north wall. Third stone from the base. She scraped away frost with her knife, revealing marks in the granite. Not random, numbers, coordinates maybe, or something else. 2.7 degrine N, 68.3 W, and beneath that, when ice blooms, light finds the seam. Ivy pulled out her GPS. Dead, like everything else electronic. But she had a compass, and she had the slit windows in the walls. She spent the next hour scraping ice from the narrow openings, positioning her headlamp at different angles, watching how the beam moved across the interior stone. At 6:43 a.m., with the headlamp aligned through the northeast window and her backup light through the window opposite, the beams intersected on the north wall. Ice bloomed there, not melting, growing. Crystalline structures formed and spread, then receded, then formed again in a different pattern. Where the light hit directly, the ice pulled back, revealing a seam in the stone. Ivy pressed on it. The panel shifted, slid inward with a grinding sound that echoed up through the stairwell. Behind the panel, a shaft, narrow, leading down into darkness that her headlamp couldn't penetrate. A desiccated file pouch hung from a nail just inside the opening. Ivy pulled it free. The leather cracked under her fingers. Inside, papers, diagrams, a logbook with EMD initialed on every page. Project Halcyon, Preservation Unit. Most of the text was redacted. Black bars across entire paragraphs. But some things remained. Technical specifications, thermal stasis regulators, cryogenic suspension protocols, and a photograph paperclip to the last page, an empty Capsule, human-sized, encased in ice that caught the camera. Flash like frozen lightning, Ivy's hands shook as she set the pouch down. From somewhere below, through stone and ice and air that tasted like metal on her tongue, came a sound, not a voice. Not exactly. Breathing, slow, rhythmic, reverberating through the tower's foundation like a heartbeat drumming against a membrane of frost. Sable's lips pulled back. Not a snarl. Fear. Ivy picked up Elise's photo again, studied the woman's face. The careful neutrality. The way her hand rested against the tower wall like she was checking a pulse. "What did you do?" Ivy whispered. The breathing continued. In and out. In and out. Waiting. Ivy sat with the logbook open across her knees, reading by headlamp while dawn light leaked grey through the window slits. Sable hadn't moved from his position near the hatch. He'd been there for 2 hours, ears swiveling at sounds Ivy couldn't hear. The logbook entries started in 1983, Elise's handwriting. Neat at first, then increasingly rushed as the dates progressed. March 12, 1983, Unit 3 operational. Subject transfer scheduled for 0400 Thursday. Director Varek confirmed thermal regulation at 2.3 degrees Celsius. Margins acceptable. March 15, 1983, transfer complete. Subject stable. Vitals monitored. No ethical review board present despite protocol. April 2, 1983. First inquiry about subject's prior identity. Denied access to files. Told it's irrelevant to preservation function. June 8, 1983. Director Varek ordered all secondary personnel reassigned. Now operating solo. No oversight, the entries jumped months at a time after that. Years sometimes. But the tone shifted. November 19, 1985, they're calling it discontinued. Orders to transfer subject to Nevada facility for final archival status. Translation, erasure. November 21, 1985, I refused the transfer. Submitted resignation. They accepted immediately. Too immediately. November 30, 1985, built the tower. Moved the capsule during storm cover. If they come looking, they'll find empty chambers and paperwork that says the program ended clean. December 1st, 1985. The ice is the only thing keeping this contained. Not just temperature, the formation itself. It grew wrong. Too organized. Like it's responding to what's inside. The last entry was dated January 1987. If someone finds this, it means the family line continued. It means there's someone with the clearance genetics to open the locks I left. Use the pattern. Manage the cold. Don't rush the thaw. What's below isn't just preserved. It's waiting. Ivy closed the book. Her father had been a park ranger. Her mother a trauma nurse. Neither had military backgrounds. No security clearances. Nothing that explained why Elise would leave this place to her bloodline, except her brother. The one who vanished in the winter storm when Ivy was 12. Search teams found nothing. Not his body, not his jacket, not a single footprint beyond the tree line. Like he'd stepped into the white and ceased to exist. Her mother never recovered. Spent the last 8 years of her life in a facility where the nurses were kind and the walls were soft. And the windows didn't open. Her father lasted 3 more years, before his heart gave out during a solo. Patrol Ivy was 23 when she became an orphan. She'd spent the next 9 years studying isolation, climate patterns, the way people vanished in cold places, the statistics of loss. Maybe that's why Elise chose her. Someone who understood what winter could hide. She checked the logbook again, flipped to the back pages. Found what she was looking for, a diagram, not architectural, symbolic. The 3 interlocked triangles from the hatch, but expanded. Each triangle labeled thermal, temporal, threshold, and beneath that release protocol. She studied it for 20 minutes, cross-referenced it with the stasis diagrams from the file pouch. The pattern emerged slowly, but it made a terrible kind of sense. The symbol wasn't just carved into the hatch. It was a key. Not mechanical, thermodynamic. You had to heat specific points in sequence, then shock them with cold. The expansion and contraction would trigger the release mechanism. She could do it. The camp stove, the snowpack outside, controlled application, measured intervals, Sable's growl pulled her attention to the hatch. The ice had thinned further while she read. Now she could see the wood grain beneath. Could make out the edges of the iron bands. Something moved under the ice. Not on the surface. Beneath it. In the space between the hatch and whatever lay below, a ripple. Like heat shimmer. There and gone. Ivy's pulse kicked up. She reached for Sable, ran her hand down his back. The dog's muscles were rigid. I know, she said. I feel it too. She made her decision, pulled the camp stove from her pack. Set it on the floor 3 feet from the hatch. Lit it. The blue flame caught and steadied. She positioned the stove's exhaust vent to direct heat at the first triangle point. Watched the ice begin to soften. Counted 60 seconds. Pulled the stove back. Grabbed a double handful of snow from outside. Packed it directly onto the heated spot. The ice popped. Loud as a gunshot. The sound echoed through the tower. She repeated the process. Second point, heat, snow, pop. Third point, heat, snow. This time the pop was deeper. Not ice breaking. Metal moving, the hatch shuddered. The ice shattered into geometric fragments that slid away from the center. And the whole thing began to sink, dropping on concealed hinges, revealing darkness and a ladder descending into blue light that shouldn't exist. Cold air rose from below. Not the cold of winter. Something older, denser. It carried a smell like ozone and copper and time suspended. Ivy grabbed her headlamp, clipped it to her belt. She looked at Sable. Stay, she said, the dog whined. His amber eyes tracked her as she moved to the ladder. She climbed down. The shaft descended 20 feet through solid stone. The blue light grew stronger as she went. Not electric. Not flame. Something else. Bioluminescent, maybe, or chemical. It pulsed faintly, matching the rhythm of that breathing sound. Her boots hit bottom. She stood in a chamber the blueprint had never mentioned. The walls were ice, not frozen water, crystalline structures that had grown in formations too perfect to be natural. They ribbed the chamber like bones, converging toward the center, where the capsule waited, 6 feet tall, cylindrical. Frosted glass or plastic, she couldn't tell which. Frost breath plumed inside it in slow motion, and through the viewport at face height, she could see a silhouette, human, hair drifting slowly like it was underwater, chest rising and falling with that same rhythm she'd heard from above, alive. Ivy's hand trembled as she wiped condensation from the viewport. The face became clearer, male, maybe 30 years old, maybe younger, peaceful expression. Like he was sleeping, like he might wake up if she knocked. A niche in the wall held another recording, smaller cassette. She pulled it out and saw Elise's handwriting on the label. For after, she pocketed it. Couldn't bring herself to play it yet. Sable barked from above, once, twice. The third bark had a different quality. Warning. Ivy scrambled back to the ladder, climbed fast, emerged into the tower's ground floor with her headlamp swinging wild. Through the window slits she saw them, lights, snowmobile headlights sweeping past the tree line. Distant, maybe a quarter-mile out, but closing. 2 of them, moving in a pattern that wasn't random, a search grid. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They circled the tower once and disappeared back into the trees. Ivy waited, counted her breaths, listened. 30 minutes later, she went outside. The dawn was full grey now, the storm from last night clearing. She found the tracks immediately. Snowmobile treads. But they didn't approach the tower. They circled it, a perfect perimeter exactly 200 yards out, and something else. Boot prints, leading away from one of the snowmobiles, not toward the tower, just walking the circle, over and over. The same person, she thought, because the depth and spacing matched exactly. Someone had spent hours circling this place in the dark, watching, not the door, the perimeter, like they were keeping something in or keeping something out. Ivy looked back at the tower, the ice-covered stone, the sealed windows, the door she'd managed to open only because Elise had left her the key. She thought about the capsule below, the breathing, the face in the frost. She thought about Elise's words on the tape. If you break the seal before you understand what you're breaking, you won't leave this place. Ivy pulled her parka tighter and went back inside. Sable met her at the threshold. She knelt and pressed her forehead against his. "We're not alone out here," she said. The dog's growl confirmed what she already knew. Someone was watching. Someone had always been watching, and now that she'd opened the hatch, whoever it was knew she was here. Ivy played Elise's second recording at dawn. She sat on the floor near the hatch opening, Sable pressed against her side, both of them staring down into that blue light. The tape clicked. Static. Then Elise's voice, older now, worn down by something Ivy couldn't name. Subject A was not a volunteer. A long pause. Breathing that sounded too loud, too close. His name was Nathaniel Cross, bioethics researcher. He found documentation about involuntary test subjects in the early trials. Went to report it. That's when Director Varick had him transferred for what they called protective custody. Another pause. The sound of liquid being poured. A drink, maybe. Steadying nerves, I was supposed to prepare him for Nevada. For erasure. Instead, I chose the tower. I told myself I was protecting him, giving him a chance. But protection and imprisonment look the same when you're the one in the ice. The recording quality degraded. Words cutting in and out. If you've opened the hatch, you've already started something you can't stop. The stasis system is failing. It's been failing for years. The ice should have killed him. Instead, it's been keeping him in this space between, not alive, not dead, waiting. Elise's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I chose the tower when the order came to erase him. But every choice becomes a cage eventually. He's been here for 23 years because of me. Because I couldn't let them win. And I couldn't let him go. The tape ended. Ivy sat in silence. Sable's breathing matched her own. In and out. Steady. She thought about her brother. About how the search teams had looked for weeks. How they'd finally stopped. How her mother had kept his room exactly the same for years. Like he might walk back through the door at any moment. How preservation could look like hope. Until it became something else, she went back down the ladder. Sable followed this time, his claws scraping on metal rungs, movements careful but determined. He'd made his choice. At the bottom, the dog circled the capsule twice. His growl was low, continuous. Not aggression. Recognition of something wrong. Something that violated the natural order. Ivy wiped the viewport again. Studied the face inside. Nathaniel Cross. A name now. Not just Subject A. She pressed her palm against the frosted surface. Cold burned through her glove. The chest inside continued its slow rise and fall. Hair drifted in that underwater way. And for just a moment, she thought she saw the eyelids flutter. She pulled back fast. Heart hammering. Jesus, she breathed. Sable's growl intensified. He backed toward the ladder, hackles raised, every instinct screaming wrong. As if he forced herself to look at the chamber's equipment. Pipes running into the walls. Gauges frozen at positions she couldn't read. A control panel dark for decades. If Elise was right, if the system was failing, then what happened when it failed completely? Did the ice collapse? Did the capsule flood? Did Nathaniel Cross wake up after 23 years into a tomb he couldn't escape? She climbed back up. Closed the hatch. Sat with her back against the wall and tried to think. The sun had cleared the trees when she heard the engine. Not a snowmobile this time. Heavier. A truck, maybe, struggling through the drifts. Getting closer. Sable was at the door before she could move. He didn't bark, just stood there, rigid, watching through the gap. Ivy grabbed her knife. Positioned herself where she could see out but stay back from the opening. The truck stopped 50 yards out. Engine cut. Door opened and closed. Footsteps. Crunching through crusted snow. Steady, unhurried. A man appeared at the tree line. Tall. Parka hood back, despite the cold. His face was weathered but calm. Late 50s, maybe. He walked like someone who'd walked this ground before. Like he knew exactly where he was going. He stopped 20 feet from the door. Raised one hand in greeting. "Morning," he called. His voice carried easily across the distance. Practiced projection. "You must be Ivy Danner." She didn't answer. Didn't move, he smiled. Kept his hands visible. "I'm guessing you have questions." "I have some answers. And it's cold enough out here to make a man reconsider his life choices." "Think I could come in?" No, Ivy said. The smile didn't falter. Fair enough. Name's Simon Varick. I'm a preservation architect, sent by the probate court to assess structural hazards. Make sure the place is safe before you decide what to do with it. Ivy's grip tightened on the knife. The deed's already transferred. No assessment required. True, Varick said, but there are some historical designations attached to this property. Federal interest. Just paperwork, really. But it needs to be filed correctly. He pulled a folded document from his pocket, held it up. I brought a radio too. Figured you might want contact with the outside world. Cell towers don't reach out here, but this'll get you to the ranger station if you need anything. He set the radio on a flat rock, stepped back. Hand still visible. I'll leave it there, he said. You can check it out when I'm gone. No pressure. I'll be at the ranger station for the next few days if you want to talk. Otherwise, I'll file my report and get out of your way. He turned, started walking back toward his truck. How did you know my name? Ivy called. He stopped. Look back. Property records. Like I said, federal interest. Property records list the owner, not what they look like. Not when they'd arrive. The smile finally cracked. Just a little. You're sharp. Your great-aunt mentioned you might be. You knew Elise? Met her once. Long time ago. She was memorable. He got in his truck. The engine started. He drove away through the trees, following the same track he'd used to arrive. Ivy waited 10 minutes. Then she went outside and retrieved the radio. It was new. Military grade. The kind that shouldn't be sitting on a rock in the Maine wilderness. The kind that cost more than the truck she'd driven up here. She brought it inside. Set it on the floor. Didn't turn it on. Sable sniffed it once. Sneezed. Walked away. 2 hours later, another engine. Lighter this time. A snowmobile. Ivy recognized the uniform before she recognized the face. Sheriff's Department. Aroostook County patch on the shoulder. The woman who climbed off the snowmobile was compact, wind-burned, moving with the efficient grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime in snow. She pulled off her helmet. Gray hair cut short. Sharp eyes that took in everything. Nora Pell, she said.
Sheriff.
Well, acting sheriff. Real ones in Florida visiting grandkids. Lucky bastard. She looked at the tower. Then at Ivy. Welfare check. Had a call this morning about someone occupying the old Danner place. Figured I'd make sure you weren't frozen to a wall or eaten by bears. I'm fine, Ivy said. I can see that. Nora's gaze moved past her to the open door. Mind if I come in? Just for a minute. Need to see you've got supplies, heat, basic survival stuff. Ivy stepped aside. Nora walked through the ground floor. Her hand trailed along the wall, stopped, pressed flat against the stone. Warm, she said. Why's it warm? Thermal mass, Ivy said. Retains heat. In negative 15-degree weather? Nora looked at her. I've lived here 40 years. Stone doesn't do this. Maybe it does when it's this thick. Nora's eyes narrowed, but she didn't push it, just completed her circuit of the room, noted the camping setup, the supplies, the dog. You planning to stay long? Haven't decided. Get lonely out here. Radio spotty, no cell coverage. Nearest town's 40 minutes in good weather. I like quiet. Nora nodded slowly. Quiet's one thing. Silence is another. You start hearing things in the silence. Your own thoughts get loud. Start talking to yourself. That's when people make mistakes. She walked to the door, stopped on the threshold. Man came through town this morning, said he was doing an assessment on this property. That true? He showed up, Ivy said. I didn't invite him. His name Varick? Yes. Nora's expression hardened. Stay away from him. Don't know what his business is, but I've seen men like that before. They smile with their mouth and not their eyes. They ask questions that sound helpful, but aren't. You know him? No. But I know the type. She pulled her helmet back on. You need anything, you use that radio, assuming it works. And if you start feeling like the walls are closing in, you leave. Don't wait. Don't think about it. Just go. She climbed on her snowmobile, started the engine. One more thing. she called over the noise. "There's a storm coming in tomorrow night, big one. Once it hits, you'll be stuck here for 3, maybe 4 days. If you're smart, you'll be gone before then." She drove away. The engine sound faded into the trees. Ivy went back inside, locked the door. That night, she woke to Sable's growling. The dog stood at the cellar hatch, ears flat, every muscle tensed. Ivy grabbed her headlamp, swept the room, fresh gouges in the floor. Bootprints, leading from the door to the hatch, circling it, then back to the door. Someone had been inside while she slept. Someone had examined the hatch, carefully, deliberately. The footprints were too large to be Nora's. Ivy checked the radio Varric had left, switched it to the ranger station frequency. Static. Nothing but static. She turned the dial. Every channel, all dead, not broken, sabotaged. She set it down, looked at Sable. The dog stared back at her with those amber eyes that saw too much. "He knows," Ivy said quietly. "He knows what's down there." And he'd been inside, while she slept, while Sable slept, checking to see if she'd opened it. The temperature shift came at dawn. Sharp. Wrong. Ivy woke to the sound of ice cracking, not the gentle melt from before. This was violent, stress fractures spiderwebbing through the tower's frozen shell. The walls wept, water ran in sheets, pooling on the floor faster than the grate could drain it. The iron bands that circled the exterior groaned as the ice between them shifted and buckled. Sable paced, back and forth, back and forth. His breathing was too fast. Ivy grabbed Elise's logbook, flipped to the section on thermal regulation, found the diagram she needed, pressure valves. 3 of them, built into the chamber walls to prevent catastrophic failure if the temperature spiked. Manual release only. She grabbed her tools, climbed down into the blue light. The chamber felt different. The air moved, not circulating, convecting. Rising heat meeting cold in currents she could feel against her face. The capsule pulsed, not the slow breath from before. Faster now, almost frantic. Ivy found the first valve, rusted shut. She applied penetrating oil, waited, tried again. It gave with a scream of metal. Steam vented, carrying that ozone copper smell in a wave that made her eyes water. Second valve. Same process, more steam. The pressure gauges started moving for the first time in decades. Red zones, all of them. She reached for the third valve. Through the viewport, something moved. Not hair drifting, not the slow rise and fall of breathing. An eye, opening, pale, unfocused, staring directly at her, then closing, slow, deliberate. Ivy's hands shook. She forced herself to breathe, forced her fingers to close around the valve wheel. She opened it halfway. The gauge needle dropped into yellow. Still critical, but not catastrophic. That would have to be enough. She climbed back up. The ground floor was ankle-deep in meltwater now. The spiral stair wept rust. Someone pounded on the door. "Ivy!" Varric's voice, urgent, concerned. "The structure's compromising. You need help down there." She didn't answer. The pounding continued. "I know you opened the chamber. I can feel the thermal shift from out here. If you don't vent the remaining pressure, the whole foundation's going to collapse." He was right. She could feel it, the tower settling, stone grinding against stone, but she didn't open the door. "Ivy, please. I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to keep you alive." Sable stood at the cellar entrance, hackles raised, watching the hatch. The tower groaned, a deep bass note that rose from the foundation and traveled through every stone. Then Sable moved. He turned, started down the ladder, too fast. His paws slipped on the wet rungs. He fell, not far, maybe 5 feet, but he hit hard, yelped, scrambled upright. Ivy was already moving, down the ladder, hands on the dog, checking for breaks, for blood. Sable's front left leg wouldn't take weight. He held it close, breathing hard through his nose. "It's okay," Ivy whispered. "You're okay." The cellar door above them swung. Ivy hadn't closed it, hadn't latched it. Varric's silhouette filled the opening. Sable lunged, pain forgotten. He threw his weight against the door from below, driving his shoulder into it, slamming it closed in Varric's face. The latch caught. Locked. The dog collapsed, breathing ragged, his shoulder already swelling. Ivy held him, pressed her face against his neck. He'd bought them time, bought them silence, bought them a chance. "Good boy," she breathed. "Good boy." From above, Varric's voice, "Calm now. All pretend's gone. You should have let me help," he said. "Would have been cleaner that way." His footsteps crossed the floor. The main door opened, closed, then nothing. Ivy sat in the blue light with her injured dog and listened to the tower die around her. Varric returned at noon. Ivy heard multiple engines this time, trucks, men's voices, equipment being unloaded. She'd spent the morning stabilizing Sable's shoulder. The leg wasn't broken, just badly hyperextended. She'd wrapped it, given him water. He'd curled against the wall and watched her with eyes that hurt to meet. Now she climbed to the ground floor, stayed back from the windows, watched 3 men in parkas, military bearing, moving with practiced efficiency. They set up a perimeter. Not close, maybe 100 yards out. Surrounding the tower, Varric stood at the tree line, hands in his pockets, waiting. Ivy opened the door. "Let's talk," she called. He walked across the snow. "Stop 10 feet away. Project Halcyon," he said. "No preamble, no pretense. I was deputy director when your great-aunt was lead cryptographer. I know what's down there. I know you've been inside, and I know the system is failing. So you came to help," Ivy said. "I came to finish what should have been finished 23 years ago." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, set it on the snow between them. "That's a liability release. You sign it. You walk away. Tomorrow morning we sterilize the site. Controlled burn. Collapse the chamber. Fill it with concrete. The tower stays standing. The land stays yours, but what's underneath stays buried. And if I don't sign, then you're here when we burn it." "Your choice." Ivy looked at the paper. Looked at him. "Subject A was a whistleblower," she said. "Nathaniel Cross. He found something you didn't want found." Varric's expression didn't change. "He found documentation that didn't concern him. Made copies. Threatened exposure. We offered him protection. He refused. Called it imprisonment. Because it was. Because he was naive." Varric's voice stayed level, factual. "Some secrets keep themselves. Others require keepers. He couldn't accept that his discovery would cause more harm than good. So you put him on ice. We offered him a choice. He chose wrong. And now you want me to choose." Varric's eyes moved past her to the open door. "Your dog's hurt. I can see him limping from here. Dogs that bite cages always bite again. They don't stop. Not until someone makes them stop. It wasn't subtle. Wasn't meant to be." Ivy felt something cold settle in her chest. "Not fear, clarity. How long do I have?" "Sunrise tomorrow. After that we proceed regardless." He turned, walked back to his men. Ivy went inside. Locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle. She had maybe 16 hours. Maybe less. She thought about Nathaniel Cross, about 23 years in that capsule, about Elise's voice on the tape. Every choice becomes a cage eventually. She thought about her brother, about how the searchers had stopped looking, about how silence became acceptance, about how the world moved on and left the lost behind. She looked at Sable. The dog watched her, waiting for her decision. Ivy made it. She grabbed the camp stove, set it on the ground floor near the spiral stair, opened the gas valve wider than it should go, positioned the flame to heat a section of pipe running up the wall. Then she waited. Pressure built. The pipe glowed. Metal expanded. She counted. At 300 seconds, the pipe ruptured. The explosion wasn't huge. Didn't need to be. Just enough to tear through rusted metal and send boiling water and stone fragments spraying across the room in a chaos of noise and steam. She'd already moved, already had Sable in her arms, awkward and heavy but moving, already had the emergency sled from her gear, already at the cellar hatch. The confusion above would buy her minutes. Maybe 5, maybe less. She took them, down the ladder one-handed. Sable whining, her shoulder screaming. the blue light pulsing faster now, responding to the violence above. She had supplies staged, straps, thermal blankets, basic field kit. She worked fast, testing the capsule's base, finding the anchor points, rigging the sled harness. The capsule was heavier than she'd expected, but it moved, inch by inch, onto the sled, secured. Through the viewport, Nathaniel Cross's eyes were open, watching her. No recognition, just awareness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know if this is better, but I won't let them erase you." His lips moved, no sound. But she thought she could read the shape. "Thank you." From above, voices, shouting, boots on the stairs. She grabbed Elise's logbook, shoved it in her pack, and then she saw it. The maintenance culvert, barely visible behind the capsule's original position. A narrow passage leading horizontal through the foundation. Elise's margin notes, the sketches she'd made, the escape route she'd planned but never used. Ivy grabbed the sled rope, started pulling. The passage was tight, meant for one person. Not one person dragging a cryogenic capsule on an emergency sled. She pulled anyway. Behind her, boots hit the chamber floor. Flashlights swept the space. "She's got the capsule!" Someone yelled. Ivy pulled harder. The sled scraped stone. The passage narrowed, then opened. She emerged into snow. Open air. Night had fallen while she worked. The storm Nora mentioned was beginning. Wind-driven flakes already reducing visibility. She pulled the sled into the tree line. Collapsed against a trunk. Breathing hard, Sable limped to her side, pressed against her leg. Behind them, the tower erupted in shouts, lights, movement. Ivy looked at the capsule, at the face inside, at the choice she'd made. The storm swallowed them into white. The blizzard was both cover and weapon. It hid them. It tried to kill them. Ivy pulled the sled through drifts that came up to her thighs. Her headlamp beam died after 3 feet, swallowed by white. She navigated by compass and memory, following the terrain features she'd noted on her arrival. The slope down, the frozen stream bed, the dense stand of birch that would provide some shelter. Sable limped beside her. He didn't complain, didn't slow her down, just kept moving. Behind them, voices, flashlight beams cutting through the storm like knives. Varick's men had found the culvert exit. They were following her track, but the wind was filling it in, fast. She had minutes, maybe less. The birch stand appeared like a wall of white. She pulled the sled into the densest section, found a depression in the ground where snow had drifted less, set up her emergency shelter with hands that barely worked. Sable crawled inside, collapsed. His breathing was labored. Ivy looked at the capsule, at Nathaniel Cross's face behind the frosted viewport. His eyes were open, watching her with an intensity that suggested he understood everything. The danger, the choice, the cost. She made her decision. She pulled Elise's logbook from her pack, found the section on emergency revival protocols. The system was designed for exactly this: field extraction, minimum viable function, enough to keep someone alive long enough to reach proper facilities. But the protocols assumed trained personnel, proper equipment, sterile conditions. She had a first aid kit, a camp stove, and a blizzard. She worked fast, used the stove to warm specific sections of the capsule's base, not to wake him, to stabilize him. The internal temperature had to rise slowly, controlled, 0.3 degrees every 10 minutes. She monitored his vitals through the diagnostic panel. Heart rate, respiration, neural activity, all of it barely registering. But there, alive, the voices outside grew closer. She could hear them coordinating, spreading out, searching in a grid pattern. Sable's ears tracked the sounds. His growl built low and steady. Ivy kept working. The temperature climbed, 0.6 degrees, 0.9. Through the viewport, Nathaniel's pupils contracted, responding to her headlamp. His chest rose higher, fell deeper. The capsule made a sound. Not mechanical, organic, like a throat remembering how to work. His fingers flexed, pressed against the interior surface. Then his mouth opened. A breath escaped, visible even through the frost and sound. Barely audible, scratched and raw and human. A word. Elise. Ivy's hands froze. He said it again. "Elise, she's gone," Ivy whispered. "I'm sorry. She died years ago. But she left you protected. She left you for someone who would understand. His eyes focused, really focused. On her face, you, he said. The word cost him. She could see the effort. You're her. I'm Ivy, her great-niece. I inherited the tower. 35 cents, a ghost of a smile. She told me. If anyone came, it would cost nothing, because truth should be free. The shelter door tore open. A man. Parker hood back, gun drawn. He saw the capsule, saw Ivy. His radio went to his mouth. Sable lunged. The dog moved wrong, favoring the injured leg, too slow. The man's gun swung toward him. Ivy threw herself between them, caught the barrel with her forearm. Pain exploded white across her vision. The gun fired, deafening in the small space. The round punched through the shelter roof. Sable hit the man low, teeth-finding boot, thigh. The man went down hard. His radio skittered across the snow. Ivy grabbed it, threw it into the dark. The man scrambled backward, retreating, blood on his leg. Fear in his eyes, he ran. Ivy didn't wait. She grabbed the sled rope, pulled. Sable followed, moving on 3 legs now. The fourth held completely off the ground. They went deeper into the trees. Away from the voices, away from the lights. The storm swallowed everything. Ivy found the cache by accident. She'd stopped to rest, leaned against a tree. Her hand pressed into a hollow in the bark, and something shifted. A metal box, sealed with wax, hidden in a carved depression that had been filled with pitch and bark to match the tree. Elise's work. Had to be. Ivy broke it open. Inside, microfilm. 4 rolls, each one labeled with dates spanning 1981 to 1985, and a note, handwritten. If you've come this far, you've already chosen. These are names, dates, transfer orders. Everything they wanted buried. Everything Nathaniel was going to expose. I couldn't give it to him then. Too dangerous. But I kept it. For the one who would come after. Make them see. Make them answer. Evie pocketed the microfilm. Started moving again. She didn't know how long they'd been walking. The cold had gone past pain into numbness. Her feet moved automatically. Left, right, pull the sled. Check on Sable, keep going. The dog had stopped limping. Not because he'd healed. Because he'd stopped using the leg entirely. He hopped on 3 legs, kept pace. Didn't make a sound. Through the viewport, Nathaniel's eyes tracked her movements. His vitals had stabilized. Temperature holding at 28 degrees. High enough to prevent cell death. Low enough to avoid shock. He was conscious. Aware. Trapped in a body that was still more ice than flesh. She whispered to him. Told him about the tower. About Elise. About the choice she'd made. He couldn't respond. But his eyes answered. Gratitude. Understanding. They reached the tree line at dawn. The storm had passed. The world was white and still and so bright it hurt. And standing at the edge of the clearing, snowshoes strapped on, rifle slung across her back, was Sheriff Nora Pell. She looked at Ivy, at the sled, at what was visible through the capsule's viewport. Jesus Christ, she said quietly. I need help, Ivy said. Her voice cracked. She hadn't realized how close to breaking she was. Nora moved forward. Checked Sable first. Her hands gentle, experienced. He needs a vet. Soon. He saved my life. Twice. Good dogs do that. Nora looked at the capsule. What is this? Evidence of something that should never have happened. And proof that it did. Footsteps behind them. Varek emerged from the trees. 2 men flanking him. All armed. He stopped when he saw Nora. His expression didn't change. But something shifted behind his eyes. Sheriff, he said. This is federal business. I need you to step aside. Federal business on my land requires notification, Nora said. I got no notification. Exigent circumstances. National security. National security. Nora's tone was flat. In Aroostook County. In a blizzard. Chasing a woman and a dog and a... She looked at the capsule. What would you call that? A classified material. Looks like a person to me. Varek's hand moved toward his jacket. Nora's rifle came off her shoulder. Not pointed. Just ready, don't, she said. The standoff held. Wind moved through the trees. Snow shifted and resettled. Ivy pulled the microfilm from her pocket. Held it up. Project Halcyon, she said. Complete records, names, dates, transfer orders. Everything Elise Danner documented before she disappeared. Everything you've been trying to keep buried for 23 years. Varick's eyes locked on the film. That's federal property. That's evidence of crimes. Crimes you were part of. Crimes you're still covering up. You don't understand what you're holding. I understand it's worth killing for. Worth erasing a man for. Worth burning a tower down for. Ivy took a step forward. But I'm not erasing anything. I'm making it visible. Sheriff Pell is a witness. This man, she gestured to the capsule, is a witness. And these records are going public. You'll destabilize systems you can't comprehend, Varick said. His voice stayed level, but there was an edge now. Desperation cutting through control. People will die. Not just careers, lives. People have already died. Nathaniel Cross spent 23 years in that capsule because he tried to tell the truth. How many others? How many names are on this film? Varick's hand moved again. Faster this time, Nora fired, not at him. At the ground, between his feet. The shot cracked across the clearing. Birds erupted from the trees. Next one's not a warning, she said. One of Varick's men shifted, reaching for something in his pack, a propane heater, the kind used for ice fishing, for warming field tents. The round from Nora's rifle had sparked off a rock. The spark found the heater's fuel line. The line had cracked in the cold. The explosion was small, just a bright flash and a whoosh of ignited gas. But it was enough. Everyone went down. Instinct and training. Hands over heads. Faces in the snow, in the confusion, engines. Multiple engines. Coming fast, state police. 3 trucks. Lights flashing even in the daylight. They'd heard Nora's shot. Had been close enough to respond. Varick stood slowly, looked at Ivy, at the microfilm in her hand. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Ivy said. It is. The police took statements. Took custody of Varick and his men. Took photographs of the capsule. And took Ivy's evidence. With chain of custody forms, with witnesses, with everything required to make it official. Nora stood beside Ivy as the sun climbed higher, as the clearing filled with people and vehicles, and the machinery of justice beginning to move. Some winters you outwait, she said quietly. Some you walk through. Ivy looked at her. Which one was this? Both. They loaded Nathaniel's capsule onto a medical transport, carefully, with monitors attached. With doctors checking vitals every 30 seconds, he was alive. Still suspended between states, but alive and no longer hidden. The clinic room was too warm, too bright. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. Everything white and sterile, and nothing like the tower. Ivy sat in a plastic chair that squeaked when she moved. Sable lay beside her, front leg wrapped in professional bandaging, sedated but stable. The vet had said he'd heal. Would have a limp, probably, but would heal. She kept her hand on his head, felt the slow rise and fall of his breathing. Across the room, behind glass, Nathaniel Cross lay in a proper medical capsule, surrounded by equipment that beeped and clicked and monitored everything. Doctors moved around him in practiced choreography, slowly raising his temperature, slowly bringing him back. A state investigator sat across from Ivy, grey suit, tired eyes. A stack of forms on his lap. I need you to identify these items for the record, he said. He held up evidence bags. One by one, Elise's microfilm. 4 rolls. Chain of custody verified. The logbook. Project Halcyon documentation. Complete the cassette tapes. Elise's recordings. Already transcribed Nathaniel's original intake papers. Buried in the capsule's base. Names, signatures, transfer authorizations. Every piece told the same story. A man who'd found something wrong. A system that wanted him gone. A woman who'd chosen protection over protocol. And a secret that had stayed frozen for 23 years, because ice was the only thing that couldn't be corrupted. How many others? Ivy asked. The investigator looked up. I'm sorry? How many other subjects were there? In Project Halcyon, how many people disappeared into preservation? He was quiet for a long moment. We're still determining that. Which meant there were others, meant Nathaniel wasn't the only one. The door opened. Nora walked in. Out of uniform, just jeans and a flannel shirt. She looked more real this way. More human. She sat down beside Ivy, didn't say anything, just sat there. They watched Nathaniel together. Watched the doctor's work. After a while, Nora spoke. They're putting holds on everything. The tower, the land. Pending investigation. How long? Months, maybe years, Ivy nodded. She'd expected that. You could sell it, Nora said. After, walk away clean. I could, but you won't. No. Nora smiled, small, understanding. Didn't think so. Later, after the investigator left, after the doctors finished their shift and new ones came in, Ivy stood at the glass. Nathaniel's eyes were closed. But his chest rose and fell on its own now. No machines breathing for him. Just him. She pressed her palm against the glass. A nurse noticed. Game over, gentle voice. You can go in. Just for a minute. He probably won't know you're there, but you can. Ivy went in. She sat in the chair beside the medical bed. Listened to the monitors. Watched his face. Elise kept you safe, she said quietly. She broke rules. She lied. She buried evidence. All to give you a chance. I don't know if that was right. Don't know if there is a right answer. But you're here. You're alive. And people know your name now. Know what happened. She pulled Elise's brass key from her pocket. The one stamped EMD. She'd kept it through everything. Through the escape. Through the chaos. Through the police custody. I'm keeping the tower, she said. Don't know what I'll do with it yet. But I'm keeping it. Because some things shouldn't be erased. Even when they hurt. Even when they're hard. She set the key on the bedside table. Within his reach, if he ever woke enough to need it. Then she left. 3 weeks later, Ivy sat at her desk in a rented room in town. Sable slept on a dog bed beside her. Still limping, but getting stronger every day. She had maps spread out. Topographic surveys of Aroostook County. Her survey notes, and one hand-drawn line in red ink. The path she'd taken through the storm. From the tower to the tree line. Through white, she'd recorded her own tape. Addressed to whoever opened any door she left behind. She told them about the tower. About Elise. About Nathaniel. About the choice between silence and truth. About how fear made you want to bury things. But courage made you dig them up. The tape sat on her desk. Beside Elise's brass key. Beside the Polaroid of a woman standing before a frozen tower. Hand pressed to the stone like she was checking a pulse. Ivy pinned the key to the wall above her desk. Pinned the map beside it. The red line stark against the contour intervals. Evidence of a path made. A choice taken. A winter walked through instead of waited out. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Miss Dana? A voice she didn't recognize. Professional, careful, yes. This is Dr. Chen. I'm overseeing Nathaniel Cross's recovery. He's awake, stable, and he's asking for you. Ivy closed her eyes. Relief flooding through her. I'll be there in an hour, she said. She hung up, looked at Sable. The dog watched her with those amber eyes that had seen everything. That had trusted her through ice and fire and everything between. Come on, she said. Let's go finish this. But as she gathered her things, her eyes fell on Elise's tape. The last recording. The one she'd only listened to once. The one that ended with 3 names. Unresolved. 3 other subjects, 3 other people preserved, hidden, erased from record. 3 doors still frozen shut. Ivy picked up the tape, pocketed it. The tower was just the beginning. Project Halcyon went deeper than one stone building in Maine. Deeper than one man, frozen for 23 years, and Elise had left breadcrumbs for the one who would come after, for the one who would choose. Ivy looked at the map, at the path she'd drawn through winter. Then she picked up a pencil, started drawing another line, toward the next coordinates, the next secret, the next truth that deserved to thaw. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, quiet, covering the world in white. But Ivy had already learned how to walk through winter, and she wasn't stopping now. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.